Hello everyone, this is Amit on behalf of Team Carnival's Review. I welcome you to this video on India-China friendship. Yes, you have heard it right. It's on India-China friendship. The topic is no doubt unique. Till date, we have been hearing about India-China rivalry. We have been looking at India-China as arch rivals or arch nemesis of each other. But somewhere inner down the lane, there are examples of India-China cooperation. In fact, we have to admit that India and China, they are far more matured even than USA and Soviet Union, the way they were. Okay, in that respect, they are, these two countries are far more matured. How come this is happening? How come we are seeing these inherent notions of cooperation between India-China relationship? Here in this video, we are going to elaborate that aspect. I'll start with the more obvious aspect, that is India-China rivalry. Yeah, that's how they have been looked at. They are looked at as the two arch nemesis. In fact, if you have to follow the political pundits or pundits of international relations, their opinion is that India-China, they by design are actually against each other. It's not about China's personal relationship with India, or not about India's personal relationship or personal aspirations with China, which are the matters here, which are the concerns here. Rather, uh, if we look at China's inherent aspiration, China wants to be the only superpower of the world replacing USA. Clear? And on the other hand, India wants to establish a multipolar world order. The inherent nature of India, or the aspiration of India for a democratic world order, that is pushing India towards this multipolar world order. What is a multipolar world order? A world order where there would be number of powers, no superpower, but number of powers. Say USA one power, Britain one power, France one power, Germany one power, similarly Russia, China, Japan, India, Israel, Brazil, South Africa, they all being powers. And all these powers, they having the capability of counteracting or counterbalancing other powers. Say one particular power, they are doing something which is not acceptable. The other powers together, they would have the capacity, or they should have the capacity to counteract here, to challenge that power who's not doing right, and tell them that what you're doing is not right, so please correct your course. Clear? This is the notion. Say, for example, in case of Iran, US, number of countries, including EU, they kept on telling USA that this is not right. But they hardly had any option but to accept what US was doing. India exactly wants something opposite to this. There should be no superpower. There should be multiple poles or multiple powers. Clear? As a result, yes, there would be a democratic world order established. If what India is aspiring for, if that is ever accepted, then yes, no doubt there would be multiple poles. That's what we are looking at. And there would be a democratic world order. Now, China is inherently against this, because if this happens, then the supremacy of China, or China assuming the status of a superpower, would never be possible. Clear? Additionally, there are two more challenges of China's aspiration in its neighborhood only. These two are India and Japan. These two countries, they are never going to accept China as a superpower. And if that happens, China will never be able to establish its supremacy across the world. Other countries, say Brazil, South Africa, they would always keep on saying that China is that country who's not a superpower or who's not a hegemon in its own neighborhood. Then how are they going to accept China as a superpower? So inherently, China has an aspiration of controlling Japan and India, especially India. Clear? So inherently, because of this design of the policies of the two countries or their aspiration, India and China somehow they have become arch rivals. Now, this part we all know. In fact, on number of aspects, say South China Sea, geopolitics of South China Sea, or geopolitics of Indian Ocean, or the race that's going on about Central Asia, access to Central Asia, or access to Africa, we can see examples of this rivalry between India and China, right? But in spite of all these rivalries, there is an inherent notion of friendship between India and China. Here in this video, we are actually going to look into that. Well, no doubt this friendship started a long time back. It started practically at the time of Nehru. So, if we have to go forward with today's understanding, we have to look into what happened during Nehru's time. Okay? 1947, 15th of August 1947, India becomes independent. Nearly 2 years back, 1949, a communist revolution takes place in China. A charismatic leader called Mao Zedong, he organizes a long march, a revolution in China. They overthrew the Republican regime of Chiang Kai-shek. That regime finally shifted to Taiwan. They shifted their base to Taiwan. And in mainland China, the communists, they established their control and they form a communist government. Near simultaneous incident. When these two incidents happened, Nehru linked these two, India's independence and China becoming a communist country. Nehru, we all know, Nehru had an inherent softness or soft corner about the socialism. So when Nehru looked at the rise of China, Nehru said that this is practically the resurgence of Asia. On one hand, India is becoming independent. On the other hand, China is trying to exert its own ideology. Maybe communism, fine, but still its own ideology. And trying to do something of its own. Right? Nehru linked these two incidents and said this is the example, or this is the rise of Asia, or resurgence of Asia. As a result, we would see it would be on 31st of December 1949 that India would officially end its relationship with the Republican government, the Taiwanese government, and on 1st of January 1950, India would firmly establish its relationship with the communist China. We would be, in the video, we would be subsequently referring them as China only. In April, K.M. Panikkar would go as India's first ambassador to China. A lot of things would keep on happening after that. Nehru and Zhou Enlai. Zhou Enlai was the Prime Minister of China at that point of time. Mao Zedong was the President, Zhou Enlai was the Prime Minister. Nehru and Zhou Enlai, they actually aspired to take India-China relationship to a next level. And we saw that how from close neighborhood to partnership to friendship, this relationship was flourishing. In fact, the highest point, the apex point of this relationship was perhaps 1954, the signing of Panchshil Treaty between India and China. We must be knowing about Panchshil Treaty. We all know of the principles, the 5 principles, that is mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, then mutual non-aggression, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, peaceful coexistence. These 5 principles enumerated by Nehru, based on that, India-China Friendship Treaty will be signed in 1954. So far so good, the relationship is going very smoothly. 1956, Nehru was actually an international figure. He was running number of projects simultaneously. There was another project in which Nehru was involved. That project was about establishing a non-aligned movement, another principle of another foundation of Nehruvian foreign policy. As a result, in one of the newly independent countries called Indonesia, in one of the towns, Bandung of Indonesia, a cooperation was organized, a conference was organized, the first Afro-Asian Summit. We informally know this as Bandung Conference. Why? Nehru was going to unveil his policy of non-alignment. Clear? So as a result, this conference. It was here only that Nehru says that the world was already divided into 2 halves. The first world order, USA and its supporters. The second world order, Soviet Union and its supporters. Nehru says that we, the developing and least developed nations, we do not have sufficient resources, not even sufficient resources for our own development. In this condition, if we join these camps, we would be forced to indulge in the war preparations that's going on among them. This is the era of Cold War. And we do not have that kind of resources to waste. Nehru says this is a luxury that these superpowers they can afford, but we cannot. So, in Nehru's opinion, it's better for us to invest whatever we have in our own development. And rather than indulging in their internal rivalry, it's better for us to have friendship with both of them, both the communist bloc and the capitalist bloc, and take advantage of the friendship with both of them. That was Nehru's approach, non-alignment. What Nehru did in his exuberance, he also invited Zhou Enlai to come to this conference. Zhou Enlai came here. He saw everything firsthand and went back and reported this to his president, Mao Zedong. Just like Xi Jinping, Mao Zedong was also, in fact, Mao Zedong is the first character, the most powerful man in China is known to be Mao Zedong. He lifelong remained president. The second person to do so is going to be Xi Jinping. They have already amended their constitution and they are actually looking at a world order, they are actually looking at a system where Xi Jinping can continue lifelong as president of China. They have already done whatever is necessary. Anyway, so Mao Zedong was the first one. So Zhou Enlai goes back and reports all that was happening in Bandung, Nehru's idea especially, to Mao Zedong. When Mao Zedong heard Nehru's idea, he was confused. He confused between Soviet Union and China. Since Nehru said that let us not confuse between or let us not side with either the communist bloc or the capitalist bloc, Mao Zedong took it as initiation of rivalry by Nehru towards the communist bloc. Mao Zedong said if Nehru is not with us, then he is naturally against us. What is this policy of not being with us or not being with USA? He confused between this. He was actually looking at from a binary perspective. That either you're with us or you're against us. And Mao Zedong as a result started treating Nehru as an agent of the West, the capitalist bloc, USA. And this understanding of Mao Zedong, it also affected India-China relationship subsequently. That China, which just 2 years back signed Panchshil Treaty with India, we would see that China would start indulging in number of things which were against the principles of Panchshil Treaty. We would see that all of a sudden, the movement that was going on in Nagaland, Naga Hill district of Assam at that point of time, would start becoming violent. The youth there would start taking up arms. They would start getting Chinese-made weapons. They would start getting money. We all can understand from where all these things were coming. Simultaneously, number of public libraries started printing maps of India and China, where they started showing Arunachal Pradesh of India. At that point of time, it was called a Nepha, another autonomous region of Assam state. They started showing Nepha as part of China. I would like to quote one example. The Peking Public Library, to be more precise, they published the first map which showed Arunachal Pradesh to be the part of China. Nehru was looking at all these developments very closely. He realized what's happening. He realized how China is reacting. Nehru was also prepared for this. What he did, subsequently we would see that in 1959, when Dalai Lama would come to India in search of refuge, Nehru would willingly welcome him. Okay? So Nehru was also preparing himself for this change. And subsequently we know that how the relationship turned in 1962 through India-China war. So the initial phase of friendship actually died down with Nehru only. Okay? The present era that we are looking at, the present era of friendship between India and China, the rise of it starts with Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. 1987, there was a skirmish between India and China in the borders, especially in Arunachal Pradesh border. and there was the threat of a war looming large over the two countries. To diffuse the tension, in 88, Rajiv Gandhi goes to China. Okay? Now, who's Rajiv Gandhi? Grandson of Nehru and son of Indira Gandhi. Here, I would like to tell you one more interesting feature or interesting point. Yes, in 1962, India lost very badly to China. But India avenged this defeat in 1967 only, within 5 years. This happened in Chola and Nathula passes of the erstwhile Sikkim, the erstwhile country called Sikkim. Today it's part of India only. In the borders of Sikkim, Sikkim was a protectorate of India. China tried to humiliate India in Sikkim, and India avenged its defeat there. And who was the Prime Minister at that point of time? Mrs. Indira Gandhi. So when in 88 Rajiv Gandhi went to China, he was the grandson of Nehru and the son of Indira Gandhi. Right? So Chinese, they took him in a different light altogether. They were very sincere about their approach towards Rajiv Gandhi. And truly speaking, this relationship that Rajiv Gandhi would re-establish would become the icebreaker in India-China political relationship and would re-establish India-China relationship. Before that, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he also tried to do the same in 1978, but it was a failed attempt. In between, China attacked Vietnam and a lot of things happened, and India-China relationship could not go any farther. But Rajiv Gandhi's visit would become the icebreaker, would firmly establish the new course of India-China relationship, or India-China friendship, we may say. Just 5 years from here, PV Narasimha Rao would go to China again, 1993. India was already suffering from economic crisis, and PV Narasimha Rao, he made economy the single point agenda of India's policy making. We know that how India shaped up Look East policy and Look West policy during this period, keeping economy at the center. If we do not know, we would try to prepare a video on that, evolution of India's foreign policy subsequently, if we can. And there I would like to elaborate on this issue, that how India was going forward with an economy-centric foreign policy approach during this time. So PV Narasimha Rao, he goes to China, 1993, and he suggests something unique. What is that? He says, see, political rivalry that's there between India and China would keep on remaining that way. For the time being, that disturbance would be there. And that especially would be there because the boundary remained disputed. And there was no real urge between India and China to settle that boundary dispute. So, PV Narasimha Rao says, let us do something this way, that India and China, they put the political dispute in back burner, that is the boundary dispute into back burner, and focus on economic relationship. If the economic relationship grows, it develops. Subsequently, there would be an urge between India and China to solve the political dispute, because they would realize the political dispute is becoming a nagging problem in the course of development of their economies. So PV Narasimha Rao suggests, let's create a joint working group, give the boundary dispute to that joint working group, put it in a back burner, and let's focus completely on the economic aspect, or building the economic friendship between India and China. China took this in a very different way. They really liked it, and they accepted it like anything. And from there we would see India-China cooperation to start. Today the friendship we are going to talk about, it starts from this background, this background which was given by PV Narasimha Rao's visit. I'm going to talk about four particular examples, of India-China cooperation. The first example is in the platforms of WTO, World Trade Organization. We all must be knowing about the current crisis that's going on, the Doha round of negotiations which started long time back to 2000, which was supposed to end by 2005, it's still going on. This is 2020. And why so? One issue called Agreement on Agriculture. See, purpose of WTO is to ensure free trade, to establish a order for free trade across the world, to boost trade through free trade practices. And for that, to create a level playing field so that no one gets an advantage of the system. And then if it would depend on the countries and their initiatives, how they sail through the course. In case of agriculture, all the countries, they give huge amount of subsidy, right? Now, given this nature of subsidies, there was inherent problem in opening up the agriculture sector. Initially, what did WTO say? They said, okay, let's divide the subsidies into two boxes, amber box and green box. Those subsidies which directly interfere with the pricing system, which distort the prices, let's put them into amber box. Say for example MSP, minimum support price. It directly interferes with the pricing system. No? It tells the farmers, okay, this is the price set by the government, you should not be selling below this. You have something, based on that, you have an assurance from the government, based on that bargain with the buyers, right? So is this the mechanism of a perfectly competitive market? Because in a perfectly competitive market, we know that pricing should be a mechanism between the equation of demand and supply. So MSP is price distorting. WTO says that this type of mechanisms, they should be put into amber box. And gradually, the countries should eliminate them. All those subsidies which are not directly price distorting, they should be put into green box. Okay? And these subsidies, the countries, they can keep on giving these subsidies as much as they want. Now see, in India, the total amount of subsidy that's given by the government to the farmers amounts to something around 80%. I'm saying, say for example, the total amount of subsidies given to the farmers in India is around 80%. That means for 10% spent by the farmer, the government of India spends 8 rupees. For 10 rupees spent by the farmer, the government of India spends 8 rupees. If that be the case in India, as an example, then the corresponding figure in USA would be 200%. And the corresponding figure in Japan would be 350%. What does that mean? That means that for every 10 rupees spent by a US farmer, the US government spends 20 rupees. For every 10 rupees spent by a Japanese farmer, the Japanese government spends 35 rupees. Just imagine the comparison. Why is this happening? Because they are developed economies, they have resources, and they are, to boost agriculture in their countries, they are giving subsidies this way, which is beyond the capacity of a developing country like India, or any developing country or this developed country for that matter. It is here that India started saying, no, we are not going to accept this. In this condition, we just cannot open up our economy or our agriculture sector for free trade with these countries. When India started objecting, China also came and stood by India. And together these two countries started leading the pack of the developing and least developed countries. That's a unique example of India-China cooperation. Clear? Similarly, we can also take the example of BRICS. What is BRICS? I'm just giving you a light hint, a brief idea about BRICS. It's a grouping of 5 countries today: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. An idea which was given by Jim O'Neill. Who's he? He was the head of economic research wing of Goldman Sachs in 2001. Goldman Sachs, the investment bank, the second largest investment bank. Jim O'Neill was the head of their economic research wing in 2001, and he writes a research report called Building Better Global Economic BRICS. This is about BRICS. We would prefer to discuss this while we take up international organizations. I'm not getting into the report in depth, but let's understand BRICS. BRICS was formed not for trade between the BRICS countries, for free trade and all these things. No. The purpose of BRICS is to control the mechanism of global economic governance. Say WTO, World Bank, IMF, the way these particular organizations they are moving, okay, create a conducive environment so the member countries of BRICS they gain some advantage in these platforms. That's the idea of BRICS. So BRICS didn't come up as a platform for free trade, rather as a mechanism to control the global economic governance so that it remains conducive for these countries or these economies to grow. Okay. 2012, for the first time, we saw that BRICS countries they offered IMF some $75 billion. Okay, here is $75 billion. IMF was in crisis at that point of time because of the global meltdown, global economic meltdown that happened, the US bubble that busted, the US toxic bubble that busted, and as a result, the global economic meltdown that happened. Because of that, IMF itself was also in crunch. And as a result, these countries, they came forward and offered $12 billion to IMF and told IMF, you need to reform. Just imagine 20 years back, 1991, India was standing in front of IMF begging for money. 20 years later, India is giving IMF money, or India is offering IMF money. Clear? That was a dichotomy. When IMF refused and a lot of things happened, in 2013, Dr. Manmohan Singh, the then Prime Minister of India, he proposed BRICS, why don't we form a bank? And in 2014, they accepted this idea. India actually prepared a working paper, presented this to all the countries. And in 2014, finally BRICS decides, let's go for a bank. Let's form a bank of our own. And India only names the bank as New Development Bank. Not only New Development Bank, another mechanism like IMF, a contingency mechanism like IMF, came up within BRICS only, called CRA, Contingency Reserve Arrangement, to deal with balance of payment crisis. The exact purpose for which IMF is there. Now, this way, again we saw India-China cooperation within the platform of BRICS. Okay. Similar examples are also visible, say in the formation of AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Again in 2014 only. China proposes formation of this bank. Why? To fund BRI projects. China realized that they alone cannot fund this $1.7 trillion project. Okay? Yeah, that's the total amount of funding that's required for BRI, $1.7 trillion. So China realized that, and China said, let's form a bank, and that bank will keep on funding BRI. And China invited 82 countries, including India. USA, Japan, they all kept on urging India, you should not join. India was already a member of a democratic quad, and they all kept on urging India, you should not join. But India said, no, we should join. In fact, India became the second largest contributor after China. Today, just imagine the total amount of investment by India and China, just these two countries, that amounts to 88% of the share. That much India contributed. So again, AIB is an example of India-China cooperation. Okay. Similarly, Oil Buyers Club. It's coming up in 2018 only. Dharmendra Pradhan, the Minister of Petroleum, he in a written reply to a question in Rajya Sabha, he talked about Oil Buyers Club. This is the fourth or the last example we are talking about as India-China, example about India-China cooperation. What is this? We all must have heard of OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. There are 13 member countries today. After Qatar, they moved out of OPEC. OPEC controls 44% of the oil production of the world. But they practically act as a blackmailing mechanism. They're a cartel. What do? They align their own production in respect to demand and keep controlling the prices in the international market. Now, China, India, they very closely observe this. And in international market right now, the maximum amount of demand comes from three countries: USA, China, and India. Now about USA, we cannot do anything. They have their own mechanism. They would never come with India and China in that respect. But India and China decided that we too can cooperate and manage our demands. Okay? Now, if supply in the market is controlled by OPEC and demand in the market is controlled by these particular two countries, they can easily counterbalance OPEC. They also ropes in Russia in that respect. Russia has a huge production of oil. Okay? So they also roped in Russia. Okay? Whatever excess demand India and China they would buy it from Russia directly. And as a result, in international market, they would control the demand, so that prices in international market always remain low. Okay? This way, a new mechanism is coming up called Oil Buyers Club. This way, vivid examples are available of India-China cooperation. Even, say for example, this informal meeting between Mr. Xi Jinping and Shri Narendra Modi. Right? We know already two informal summits between these two leaders that has taken place. Okay? They are also examples of India-China cooperation only. And just imagine to the extent this cooperation is going today. That's why I said these two countries, they're far more matured. They're more matured than what USA and Soviet Union were. Clear? So India-China relationship is not only about their rivalry, it's also about their cooperation. Normally we overlook this part of cooperation. That's why in this particular issue, we focused on this part of cooperation. Cooperation between India and China. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. And if you're watching this on Facebook, please share as much as you can. If you've liked this, obviously. Thank you. Thank you guys.